Hey, this is Tegan, one of the hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
Strike three, you're out. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the baseball show that goes beyond the foul lines. This is Caught Listening on the Public House Media Network. Christian Heimall here with you. We broadcast, as always, on Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, iHeartRadio. You can find us on Google and Apple Podcasts as well, and of course on publichousemedia.org. We're into the middle of April now, and what would have been the start of minor league baseball, independent leagues would have been starting up in about a week or two as well. So we're still trying to find ways to get our baseball fix, and for many people. And what you've actually been seeing a lot of major leaguers doing now is playing video games against one another. A lot of people playing the show against one another. A lot of, I believe I even saw last week, I think the Mets broadcast team was doing a broadcast of a baseball game on the show as well. So video games are certainly one of those ways to waste time, fill time if you want to, prefer not to use the term waste, but also to get your baseball fix. And it's not just the new ones, but there's some classic ones to play as well. And we figured we'd dedicate a whole show to that and talk about it a little bit. And Mike Clair, MLB.com writer, actually wrote about this in January. He was ahead of the curve. Before we even had self-isolation, he was already talking about the best video games in baseball of all time. It's gotten some extra run a little bit. But Mike, we appreciate the time. And what kind of sparked the idea for the post that you had? I believe it was originally in January, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think that at the time it was, basically, hey, it's winter. It's around Christmas. A lot of people get, video games or systems,
right.
or basically they're just tired of seeing their family so much. So it was, it was like, well, listen, let's talk about some of the best video games of all time. Then it seemed, all right, do this for a month, and pitchers and catchers will report, and you can play a couple of games here or there. And instead, we are all just existing in this make-believe reality that we can make playing, franchise mode in the show or whatever. Because that's all we got right now.
What was the first baseball game, video game maybe that you can remember playing?
Oh, I know this one exactly. I played MLBPA baseball. Came out in like 94, 95. Basically, it was the Players Association game. So all the teams are just Cincinnati, New York National, New York American. But it was all the players' names. You could play a full season. I had gotten a Sega Genesis, and I remember sometime that summer I was 7 years old, and I remember I was baseball obsessed, and I remember walking through Toys R Us and seeing it in the case, and I think even then, like, video games somehow haven't gone down or up in price really. Like, even then it was like $50 or something. And I just like begged and begged and begged, and I guess my mom was like, this will shut him up today and probably for months. So that was my first game, but they didn't keep stats in the game. I was obviously, like, I think every 7-year-old in the 90s, I was obsessed with Ken Griffey Jr. So
yeah, of course.
I would play as the Mariners. Of course. And I would get out a yellow legal pad from my mom's office, and I would hand keep track of all Griffey's stats at the plate. And I would play against myself, so I would throw him fastballs down the middle, and then just So,
but you were hardcore on it though.
Oh man, I was obsessed. I played that so much. I remember the game. I remember the like weird synth pad music.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great game. Like, nobody ever talks about it as one of the best games, but it was the first, and so it's the one that if I was in a bunker and I had to pick one, I might end up choosing that one.
It's different. It's a little different for me. Like, I don't know if this was the first one that I had played, but it's definitely the first one I remember, and I remember it solely because the trailer as it was loading up. And this was a game that I know was on the original PlayStation and I believe on a couple of other systems, but I knew it from playing on PC. and playing on the old, like Windows 95, Triple Play 97 with Tony Gwynn on the cover.
Yes!
That was, I loved that. And so the thing is, like, I don't know if this is exactly where it came from, but I feel as that trailer, first off, is amazing, number one. Secondly, I actually just looked it up on YouTube about maybe 2 hours ago. I watched it, but the broadcast on that was like, I think that's what maybe first instilled this idea of wanting to be a broadcaster, was that you were voicing a video game, which was so cool. But I loved that game, and when you would hit home runs and like fireworks would come up out of the like pixelated crowd, like, it was the most ridiculous thing in the world, but it was amazing.
That one was a huge one in my life too, and I don't know if it officially was like the first, like, I don't know, next gen kind of game, but to me, I think Triple Play 97 is like the difference between sort of like the Sega Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo games and like what came next. So like it's a huge jump forward. That game stands out clearly as like it was buggy, wasn't it?
Very buggy, very buggy. And like for a young kid living on the East Coast, that was kind of like my real true coronation into Tony Gwynn and what he meant, because like when you didn't have, or when I wasn't waking up or staying up to watch SportsCenter and see highlights every single night or every morning, you didn't know a lot of West Coast teams or anything like that. You didn't know some of those great players. So for me, seeing someone on the cover like that, you're like, oh, this guy must be really good. And then you start to learn more and more about him. And so that game was, like I said, I don't know if that was the first one I ever played, but that was definitely one of the first ones I can certainly remember out of that, which, again, the trailer for it is just hilarious. You can YouTube it. It's a minute long. So what else are you guys going to do now after you're done listening to this podcast? Go ahead and find that on YouTube. But Mike, I want to ask you about the list that you put together. You put together the 10 greatest baseball video games in history on MLB.com. And I love how you went 1 to 10. You didn't go 10 to 1. You just came right out of the gates and said exactly what number 1 was. But before we get into the top 10, were there any ones that just missed the cut? Any ones that maybe you kind of sat there and went, you had to really make a debate between 9 through 12 or whatever it might have been?
Yeah, there was actually a few of those. So I have to say, I haven't actually played every single one on there. I ended up talking to a lot of people, and so like Baseball Stars, I think that's around number 5 or something on the list. That was a little before my time, but the people I talked to were like so effusive in their praise for it. And there were a couple games similar to Baseball Stars that weren't as popular, that involved sort of like the strategy, managerial stuff. So there was Earl Weaver Baseball that a lot of people, especially very stats people, were like, this was my game. I think someone showed that, like, it's a video game, but you would still have almost like a slide rule type calculator to, I don't know. I have no idea, because I've never seen anybody play it before. There was Earl Weaver. A couple people mentioned Tony La Russa Baseball, which was then a sequel was made for that with a Tommy Lasorda Baseball, or like they were within the same family. So those were ones that people had mentioned to me that I had seen around, but they didn't have like this like huge groundswell of support. So those are probably the closest ones, but I kind of had to end up folding them. I think also there's one other one I'm totally forgetting on that's similar to Baseball Stars that was like early Nintendo, Super Nintendo that a lot of people loved, but I kind of chose the more advanced game as we went along, and Atari Baseball did not come anywhere close to it, because sure, it was like the earliest, but I don't think anybody really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You come right out of the gate with number 10 here with Out of the Park Baseball, which, again, many people don't really necessarily consider it a video game, because this is kind of like the first real like franchise mode type game and simulation style game. Like for me, when I was in college, the one that got me through a lot of classes that I hated paying attention to was Baseball Mogul, very similar to Out of the Park Baseball.
Yeah, Baseball Mogul, the number of hours we spent in college with my one. The thing is, there was only one roommate who had a computer that could like run the game, so we would all just sit around him while we played seasons. I think my favorite thing to do with those games, because I'm very bad. This is why I would never, ever be a good fit in a front office. I'm terrible at these games. So honestly, one of my favorite things to do is just like create myself or create someone and be like, okay, they throw a knuckleball, but also a 95-mile.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Simulate 20 years and be like, what would a player like that do? Or like,
right.
All right, he's a shortstop, terrible defense, no power, no batting eye, but makes amazing contact. What does that look like?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a little scientific laboratory for baseball types. So
yeah. So I mean, but like with those games, those simulation style games, there's a different like. Again, now with the way so many of these sports games have evolved, and there's franchise mode, and you can make every single decision. I remember there were even a few years ago when EA Sports came out with NFL Head Coach, and like you were only like you didn't actually do anything except call plays and make decisions, but which I mean flopped. But yet there's still franchise modes and still GM type modes. That was kind of those games, at least that like out of the park, were kind of the first foray into these franchise modes that you start to see that people still have some sort of real excitement about. Yeah.
It's like honestly, because I don't understand how any video games are made. This is a world that I don't get. But like I can understand someone like building out like, okay, we make the mechanics and we just have to figure out how to like make baseball work.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like we need to figure out how to make the world seem real without ever actually playing the game, and like that to me seems almost harder. Like, how do you simulate reality? Because if you're playing those games, you want it. You can't go arcade. You don't want a guy hitting 80 home runs. You have to like, and that seems almost more difficult to pull off.
Well, and that's kind of brings us to an interesting. We're talking with Mike Clair, MLB.com writer. One of his pieces, the 10 best baseball video games in history. The fine line. It seems as though we talk about it, video games in general. When you talk about how realistic the graphics are, that generally bumps up points in terms of how good a quality a game is. And you get to that and how realistic certain aspects of games are, especially in sports games when you start seeing ratings for players and how talented they are based off their real life. But then there's also that line that just kind of throws it completely to the wind and just says there's no way this is real, like number 9 on your list, Base Wars. I love the little thing you put on here. Is it the best game on the list? Absolutely not. Is it the only game on the list set in the 24th century with cyborgs and robot fights during close plays? Yes, it is. And like that just throws reality completely out of the window. But that was also, that's Konami number 1. But that was also like the hilarity of that when I went through this list, because I had never heard of that game until I went through your list.
Yeah. I like it's a sad thing, and I wish I could remember who posted the joke online, but it was basically like, oh, this game exists. If only like it existed now, we'd be playing baseball. Like they need the robot players just to get the game going.
Right.
I mean, like that is what's kind of fun about video games is there's some people who want the most realistic version possible.
Right.
There's some people who just like want RBI baseball arcade version, and then there's some people who are just like what there was Slugfest, which was basically like NFL Blitz,
like NFL Blitz, yeah.
I guess
exactly.
Yeah, so that was another one that came close. But yeah, there's some people who maybe they kind of like baseball, or maybe like I follow my team every day. I don't want to do that. I want to see what it would be like if robots were playing and things blew up. It's, you need some escapism sometimes. So, I think that's a good time.
So we already talked. You brought up Slugfest, which is at number 7 on your list. Number 8 was Triple Play Baseball, which we talked about it. And the what's fun about those type of games, like Triple Play, obviously you had the realistic side of it, and you could play the actual seasons and things. But then what's fun with a lot of these games is like the craziness that comes out on the side. Like currently there's. I've been playing a lot of Madden right now over the course of the winter, and they have the Ultimate Team thing where you're like going back and trying to like beat Randy Moss 1-on-1 to claim Randy Moss onto your team or whatever. Like it's weird. But then Triple Play, like in 2001, you've got the ability to play a baseball game in the living room and hit homers off like the couch and stuff like that. So like you've got ridiculous things, and then of course you have Slugfest, which was baseball's answer to blitz and NHL hits, where literally like you could drop kick somebody at home plate to try to be able to jar the ball loose. Like just the ridiculousness of it all, but also kind of like there was an era of that for video games. Like NHL hits was one of my favorite games of all time for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think maybe it's like Grand Theft Auto killed that because it's like, oh, what's the point in I can make like a really big hit on this guy when I have like this entire open world, like I can do literally anything.
Right.
Whether you can, like, I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption since then, and I can choose to be a good character or I can choose to go around like killing literally everybody I see. And so especially with I think that's one of the issues with Slugfest compared to like NFL Blitz is because baseball's kind of so structured, it limits your opportunities for insanity. It's like if there's a play at the plate, you can do something, but you can't just stand at the plate and like turn around and start, bashing
whacking the catcher.
So
you can't do all that stuff. But I mean that's kind of the fun part. So again, so you've got 10 was let's see here. 10 was Out of the Park Baseball, 9 was Base Wars, 8 Triple Play, 7 Slugfest, at 6 RBI Baseball, which again starting from right almost basically kind of killed MLBPA. What you were talking about this at the start of it all. But the ability to actually start playing as some of these superstars was a lot of fun. I want to get into your top 5 because we mentioned baseball stars a little bit, and then you have baseball stars at number 5. Your top 4, I think, could be interesting for some people, and I'm interested to see how if I want to know, did you get any backlash for having backyard baseball at number 4 and not higher?
There were some people that wanted it higher.
Okay.
I will definitely say that this is the most shocking one. I only played as a kid. I only played like backyard baseball once or twice because I was one of those like insufferable kids who wanted the most realistic.
Oh yeah.
So because it was so stylized and everything, like, and maybe I was like 2 years older than like the like target audience. Maybe I was just like slightly old enough. So I think today, honestly, I would be really drawn into this arcade, fun, pick it up. You don't ever have to have really, it's accessible for everybody type game more than I would have, when I was like 13, when I was like, no, I want to run my team and I want to do everything and I want it to be like I'm a real baseball player and a real GM and a real manager all at once. So I know people are obsessed with it, and it really has this like amazing place. And I'm honestly shocked at how popular it is with sort of like the young players coming up to the majors now. I know Colt Tucker of the Pirates has like, and he's one of the players doing like the Players League thing now.
Right.
But he has like a commissioned piece of baseball art in the style of backyard baseball that the artist put like his favorite teammates and players in the league, but also himself in the piece, which is just kind of it's developed like an entire cult following on its own that I guess I completely missed out on. It kind of bums me out.
And that's and we've actually got a listener question coming up about backyard baseball that might be more controversial than where you put them on the list.
Wow, okay,
yeah. So, but I mean, again, it's one of those that like. I love that game. Don't get me wrong, and I agree with you. I think I more wanted that realistic figure, and that was a fun game to play like with your friends. But it was just, there was something about it. I don't know. Like it's weird going back and playing it now because I can't always get into it again after the current versions of games. So at 3 you have MLB The Show, and 2 you have Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball. I'm wondering what went into the decision with 2 and 3, and was it close at all, 2 and 3?
So, I mean, the way we're talking about the top 4 are very close. I mean, I think, to me, like, it obviously becomes a personal preference thing, but I think if you put any of the top 4 as your top game, I don't think I could really argue with it. I just go, okay, great. You feel differently. MLB The Show suffers for me a little bit. There is I think it's amazing. And actually I usually, get every other year's game. So I have this year's, and I think this is the best one yet.
Okay.
But there is that balance between realism and arcade and sort of like the ease of play. And I think there's something that MVP has where it feels real, but it's a little easier maybe, or just like the mechanics just are a little smoother, where MLB The Show is light years ahead in graphics. It has all the different game modes. You've got the legendary players. You can play online. Like, it has all these other great modes, but when you get down to like the actual, like, how much do I want to like sit down and just do this for the next 1 to 8 hours, I guess. I think it traditionally has lost out a little bit. I have to say, though, I really think that this year's game has some of that smoothness that I was maybe missing. And yeah, so it really just kind of came down to, like, we're really splitting hairs at this point. And because I put MVP at the very top, and MLB The Show is really the continuation of MVP. I mean, they have a lot of the same employees. It was also like, well, let's go with the other big game that goes stylized, that is a little cartoony, but is sort of a mix of the real and the cartoony, and one that kind of lives on in people's memories maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
And then, of course, at number one, I mean, I think Slugfest might have been one of the first. Like, I remember having that for Nintendo. I remember having, oh goodness, it was like Home Run Derby or something like that on Nintendo. One of the Griffey ones on. I just remember looking. I just remember staring at Ken Griffey for so long at the cover. But then number one, and this is kind of a personal. I feel like I've by having you on the show and talking about this, I feel like I have been personally vindicated for a crime that I committed 2 years ago on another podcast. We were doing a sports video game. We were doing a sports video game draft, and nobody took MVP Baseball, and more specifically, nobody took MVP Baseball 2005, which is probably the best version of MVP Baseball. It wasn't even taken whatsoever. So by having you on here now, yes, by having you now on here, I feel like I have cleansed myself of my sins, and we are now discussing the greatest baseball game of all time, MVP Baseball 2005, of course, that had Manny Ramirez on the cover, and the only other trailer that I can remember, because growing up as a Boston Red Sox fan, it was all about the Sox, that trailer, and Manny Ramirez. So what about this game makes it probably the best of all time?
So, obviously every video game also, like, really comes down to the fun you had playing it. So, for me, I tried to strip this out of the ranking. I tried to be, but, like, this game was what we played freshman year of college. We all crammed into, like, one dorm room, and we would just play seasons, and, like, people would be trying to sleep because there's the one TV in the one room. Right. And I would be like, sorry, I've got to finish this game. It's this whole inning now. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'll leave when I'm done, but I'm not leaving until I'm done. But, like, there's a reason why this is a game that's still being modded, that people are still updating the rosters for. It's because there is a perfect balance between it's easy to play, hitting. I can't hit at all in the show, really. And, you had the little, like, lights light up to tell you slider, change up, curveball, and that was huge. Like, there is an ability to sit down and play this. You can get really good at it, but you could just quickly drop in, and the franchise mode, this was the first one that introduced, like, minor league systems. Yeah. So for the first time ever, I could play as the Pirates, my favorite team, and realistically be like, well, we're not going to win this year, but if I develop everybody and Sean Burnett turns into this great starting pitcher, then we're going to be fine.
It's incredible, but, like, I also remember, like, that was the first. I think that was one of the first sports games that I was playing where you could play online, and that was when it was so funny. You could start playing online, and there were world rankings that you were playing on, and, like, I started playing online, and I was just getting absolutely crushed because I didn't have all the time in the world to play. I didn't really. Then all of a sudden, I realized how valuable Tim Wakefield and the knuckleball on like hard or like all-star level, Hall of Fame level really was. And then you just start dominating, online games by using a knuckleball because, guys, nobody can hit a knuckleball on, like, the hardest level possible because it is so freaking hard to hit.
I had, in some franchise mode, like 12 years into the future, I had some weird, like, some glitch of the game at that point where, I had some knuckleballer who also threw like a 97 mile per hour fastball.
Right.
And, that was just the best. And I would just play people and I'd be like, sorry, I didn't make this guy. This is what the game gave me. I'm sorry you have no chance of hitting anything at any point, but this is how it's going to be.
With MVP, and I almost went this a little bit with backyard baseball because, as you point out in the article, EA they lost the rights to Major League Baseball the very following year. So that was the last year of MVP baseball. I almost wonder if that's part of the nostalgia of it between that backyard baseball and the nostalgia of those games because we haven't seen the updated version of what it could have become with the MVP baseball franchise. How much of that do you think is why the community is there is such a dedicated community to continuously modding and updating that video game?
I think that's a good point. And now I'm kind of wondering, whenever MLB The Show is done,
right.
5 years after that, are we going to say MLB The Show 24 or whatever
right.
is the best game ever because you really have time to sit and think and you're kind of stuck with it?
Mm-hmm.
Because the next year MVP came out with 2006, but it was a college game.
Right.
So a handful of people reached out and actually they improved on it and you could build your own stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 80% is it's just a really, really fantastic baseball game. But the other thing was that there was 2K, which was fine, but really
2K wasn't.
It took a while before maybe 2000. I don't remember when the first show was. Maybe it took until the 2010 version of the show for us to be well, this game we're now far enough away and the rosters are so different. This game is actually a better game. But it allowed it to build up and you were well, I'm gonna play 2005 again rather than get the 2008 game, and then you just have a larger group of people obsessed with one game. I think that's a really great point, probably part of why it has this cult following.
Just incredibly interesting. So we got actually a couple of people had put up. We talked about Slugfest, which was what one of our fans wanted us to discuss, but then somebody else, one of our others, wanted to talk about Sega Genesis World Series Baseball. Another one that had a full series of, started in '94, ended when 2K basically took over and started, when Sega started working with 2K games and MLB 2K started. But, what do you remember of World Series Baseball?
So, you asked me earlier the ones that just missed the cut, and I didn't mention this one, but I should have, because I think World Series was the one I mostly played until sort of triple play came around.
Right.
That was the one I think when I'd go to Blockbuster and I'd rent a video game because my allowance wasn't enough to actually own one.
Right.
And I'd try and get through an entire season. I played as the Blue Jays a lot for some reason. I think I loved Ed Sprague for some reason. So
there couldn't have been a more random Blue Jay that you could have picked, by the way, in that moment.
Yeah, I think it was because whichever one stood out in my memory, he hit 23 home runs the season before. So I'm this guy is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one was close. It just missed out because there were games that were more advanced or more popular that sort of did the same thing. But I mean, that one I know I spent years and years and years on and really loved. I don't know if you ever really got into the World Series game.
Not as much, a little bit, but I went more right to anything EA Sports did, just because of that was just the progression with everything. It's Madden was EA Sports, let me do everything else EA Sports has. So I kind of fell into that brand loyalty, I guess, pretty quickly. So we're talking with Mike Clair, MLB.com writer here, about best baseball video games, and it's interesting. The way these franchises kind of work, there's so many of them. Where, we just talked about obviously MVP, 2K, Triple Play, World Series. There are so many franchises that just continued on. It's intriguing to see how that used to be, and now it's all kind of funneled in, and it is kind of the show is just basically taken over now. You have RBI baseball and some other things that are still around, on your phone and maybe on your computer. But it's interesting to see the way that the show is completely taken over, and how it has adapted to some of the things that people are looking for now. I know I don't have the show yet. I'm looking forward to getting it, but the ability to create yourself and go up through the minor leagues, I know is something that's huge for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that is one thing that I love the mode. I love the idea of the mode. It still frustrates me a lot. That was like the one when I got the new one that I started with, because if you're doing that mode, that to me is one of the like realism ones that you really want to feel real. And I was like a 15th round draft pick. I was having a great year in AA, but they moved me to the bullpen. Fine, I'm a 15th round pick. Nobody's expecting much from me. But then I get called up to the major leagues, and I'm in the starting rotation. And so there's little things that, and I imagine it's a very difficult thing to pull off.
Right.
But I think that if you're playing that mode, it's because you really, really, really want to like get the feeling that like I am grinding my way through the minor leagues to become a star.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things they still miss from it. The fact that it exists at all is super cool, and like the way that when you play it, you are hyped. You're not playing as the whole team. You're playing as this person. You're seeing everything from their point of view. When you're on the base paths, you're seeing things from the base paths. So there's all those cool little things, but it seems like there could be some more attention paid to that. But it also seems like more and more people just want to play online, so it obviously makes sense that it seems like more of the attention's paid to sort of building out the online experience.
Fair enough. Like I said, I mean, I'm when I found out about the minor league stuff, I was like, I was pumped. I was ready to get it because like my favorite part of playing NCAA college football was to be big man on campus and basically come out as a high school recruit and win Heisman trophies and all that fun stuff. So really really excited for this part. So we're closing up here in just a little bit, but we'd like to play a little game called Pepper where we take our fans' questions and thoughts, and you and I just kind of give quick hitting answers back and forth. Sound like fun?
All right.
Awesome.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. So here we go, Mike. First one is coming in from Jason. What's your favorite system to play games on? I guess we're going beyond just baseball games. So better system to play.
We're talking right now, or we're talking all time?
I guess right now.
Let's
go right now and all time. Let's do both. Yeah.
All right. So right now I'm gonna say PS4, and that's really just because the show's on it. I actually think it might be Xbox, but and all time. I mean, you can't do better than Super Nintendo.
Okay. Well, I'm going to agree with you on the PS4 because it's been probably 10 years since I've played an Xbox. Also, again, the show is on there. But I'm just going to, for my own personal sake, I mean, the amount of, like, in my years in college, we had a lot of nostalgia games, and we played a lot of Mario Party and a lot of Smash Brothers and a lot of Star Fox and whatnot. So I'm going with N64, just a little bit further down the timeline, but all time it's got. And I actually still have an N64 that I still play GoldenEye on quite a bit. So
I was thinking about that. I hated the controller so
Fair
much.
enough.
I could never get behind N64. Anytime I played and went to someone's house in N64, I was like, what is this? How am I supposed to hold this thing? So
fair enough. And actually, I'm pretty sure my fiance hates the controller, but I can't remember or not. I'm pretty sure she does. Anyway, last one here, and this is the one I kind of teased a little bit earlier. This is a pretty. I think this is the fact that someone's asking this question is a little is blowing my mind. Eric.
I'm scared.
Eric is asking, is Pablo Sanchez the most overrated fictional character of all time?
Wow. I love this fictional character because we're not even talking video games. We're talking like
Crash
everything.
Davis. We're talking Benny the Jet. We're talking Roy Hobbs. I mean, Steve Nebraska. Like, take your pick. There's so many like fictional characters here that you just basically like, wow.
I mean, if we're saying fictional character, we're talking about Sherlock Holmes. We're talking about anyone that shows up in Canterbury Tales, like
Captain America. Like, we're talking Deadpool here. Like Black Panther.
Yeah.
It's the most over. Like, is pop? Wow.
You know what is pop? God, I didn't ever play backyard baseball enough to like. I want to say yes because that just seems like fun to stir the pot because I know everybody. God, the most overrated fictional character of all time. All right. So you know what? I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to say within baseball. So at least then, I don't have to pull in 2,000 years of fiction writing into one thing. So the most overrated fictional baseball.
Like, I don't know if there are any others. Like I'm trying to think.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is tough. It's like
see, for me, there was like I can't stay in baseball, but like I'm trying to remember who it was, but there was like a Bulls, black number 65 on like the old NBA video games, and that was supposed to be Michael Jordan. It's like because Jordan wouldn't give his likeness. Like for me, that's the most overrated one of all time because we know who it is. That's Jordan. Like come on.
Yeah, cause that's what I was thinking. I was thinking John Dowd from MVP that was supposed to be Barry Bonds because he wasn't part of the union. And what was he? He was like some boring dude with like a goatee. So you know what? I would rather hang out with Pablo Sanchez than John Dowd. So I'm going to say John Dowd, most overrated. He was amazing in the game, but I don't want to acquire John Dowd. So Pablo Sanchez very close. Love the question though. That's someone who wants to start something.
Someone who clearly has nothing better to do than stir the pot on social media right now. So, but we appreciate them listening. We appreciate them hanging out with us. So, he's Mike Clair, MLB.com. Check out all of his writing, and of course, check out that list of the top 10 baseball video games of all time. Mike, let the folks know where they can find you and keep up with some of your writing.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Michael S. Clair, no E on Claire. It was cut down from some much longer Russian name long time ago. And then, you can find my stuff at MLB.com. I've got posts up there a bunch of time. Most of my stuff is on the little offbeat tag. So if you're looking for weird, wacky stuff, go to the news tab and click offbeat. And, it'll be more fun video game off the field weird stuff. So awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. And before we let you go, just these are very strange times, and we don't think to ask this question enough with people. But how are you doing? How are things where you are? How are you? And just with all of the craziness that is happening.
Oh man, well, thanks for asking. So far we're doing good. We've been isolating and staying in, and Me and my wife are getting by. I think she's a little tired of seeing me 24 hours a day, but if that's the worst of it, then we're pretty lucky. How about you? Everything good where you're at?
Yeah, we're fine. Fortunately, I was so involved with live sports for such a long time that I missed out on a lot of great TV shows. So I'm finally going back and watching them. Like I'm in the midst of season 5 of Game of Thrones right now because I'd never seen it until 2 weeks ago when we started. And then, it's just kind of like, playing some video games, cleaning. My dogs couldn't be happier. So, but that's about it.
Yeah. Hey, that's not too bad. Yeah. Catch up on some prestige dramas. I got to do Succession. I don't really want
That's
to.
the one I keep hearing about that one too.
So.
I keep hearing about that and Tiger King, and I refuse to watch. My fiance is watching Tiger King right now, and I refuse to watch it. I just can't.
Yeah, Tiger King, no thanks. Seems really dark. I like animals. I don't know. But Succession, maybe I'll half watch. When I'm, just clicking around, and maybe it'll suck me in. So
we'll see. But we appreciate the time, Mike, as always. And again, folks, follow him on Twitter, Michael S. Clair, no E at the end of Claire. We got to make sure about that.
E?
Mike, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Michael Clair of MLB.com. Let us know your thoughts. I mean, maybe there's a video game we didn't touch on or one that maybe you're playing right now, but let us know what your favorites are. Find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Caught Listening by Public House Media, or you can email the show, caughtlisteningphm@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. We are on Google and Apple Podcasts, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, iHeartRadio, and of course, you can find us on publichousemedia.org. Go and get yourself some awesome Caught Listening gear. Have a lot of fun with that as well. Next week, we switch over and we talk baseball jerseys. Joe Rivera of Sports Nation, Sporting News. Joe Rivera is going to join us and talk about some of the best teams' uniforms in baseball history. What are some of your favorites? Let us know. Be a part of the show. Until next week, I'm Christian Heimall, and you have been Caught Listening.